right. Good morning, everyone. Charlene, Wanda, great to have you with us. My name is Jenny Moutou, and you may know this lovely gentleman who is at the top of my screen, Rob Machin. I'm really delighted to have you with us. We're going to get into this presentation. We value your time, so we're going to be getting through there quite speedily, but we'd love some interaction from you. So if you, as I don't know you, if you could just let us know what you're interested in learning today around capture management. Hopefully we'll have that in the content, but if we don't, we definitely will be covering it at some point. And if you could just let us know where you're dialing in from today, that would be wonderful. You can go ahead and put that in the chat when you're ready. Or you can come on screen and talk to us, even better.
I'm calling in from Brisbane.
Okay, lovely. And what were you interested to, to learn or to get better clarity on today?
Well, others have actually asked me to supplement. So be included as a consultant to supplement their tender applications, which then piqued my interest. And maybe I should be looking into tender applications. So I have never done one at all.
Yeah.
Only been given the proposal to supplement or help them supplement their tender application. So
okay, excellent. So you're in the right place. Would you mind sharing just a little bit around what your business is?
Yeah, so I am the founder of Psychosocial Safety First.
Yeah.
My mission is to prevent workers' compensation claims and embed psychological and psychosocial safety within businesses.
Okay, fantastic. Really great to have you here. I, in my spare time, scour the tender portals looking for different opportunities. And there's certainly opportunities in that space. And obviously, mental health is becoming a primary issue for organizations. So really looking forward to sharing with you what we have today. And also, I'm so delighted that you're here because I heard a statistic recently that something like only 3% of funding goes to female-led businesses. And Rob and I have a little personal mission about increasing those stats and working with more women, particularly, who are in business, who, can capitalize on these opportunities. So welcome. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you, Jenny.
Wanda, the invitation's there. There's no pressure. And of course, you can use the chat as well. All right, I'm going to move on. Rob, do you want to go to the next screen?
I shall indeed.
All right, so our assumptions are that you're already smart, obviously. You're already doing great work, and we want to help you and facilitate the next level in your business, essentially, right? And we see tenders as a very smart way to grow and scale your business. And we think about it like this in terms of it being predictable income for your business. So as we're going through this adventure, and Rob is going to take us through capture management, I want you to think about that as the primary base for this. So how can you grow and scale to your own goals and strategy? But this is what tendering will allow for. And so what would it mean to you personally? What would it mean to your business? And when you think about the people that you serve and the kinds of work that you're doing, so Charlene, you just mentioned psychological safety, and we know that that is one of the biggest issues in organizations, that they are generally not safe for people to speak and to show up. So imagine that this funding could actually help you increase the number of people that you impact and actually change the way the dynamics are in organizations. That's our goal.
You're getting me excited, Jenny. Keep going.
All right, excellent. Rob, next screen, please. All right, so why are you here? We've made some assumptions, of course, but generally in our conversations, we know that we've worked with people or spoken to people who have lost tender bids that they really deserve to win. So maybe you're here because you want to understand what were some of those gaps that you can start to fill to put yourself in the best position going forward. Maybe you've mastered service delivery, but you're missing out on tenders because you're not speaking the buyer's language. Maybe you're not aware of tenders being out there that actually fits your business and what you're trying to do. Perhaps you are in category 3. You recognize that tenders are a strategic tool to grow your business, and now you're diving in and you want to learn more. Or perhaps you just want to win more tenders more often, and you're looking again to strategically and critically evaluate your business and how you can do that. Next slide, please, Rob. All right, so in today's session, we want to tell you why SMEs have the advantage now. I was speaking with somebody at an event yesterday who went to a construction-based meeting, and he was telling me, Jenny, you know what? With the Olympics coming up, we have a 7-year runway. There are so many projects going on in Queensland just in that construction and building space. And yet there is all of these issues that are arising. Now, you know, when we think of tenders, often we think of large corporations filling the gap, but there's plenty of opportunities for businesses at the local level as well as the state level to start filling in. And Rob and I, we're committed to helping build that capability inside of business owners, inside of organizations, so that this is something that they can do for themselves going forward. And that's very much what the tender fit method is about. Rob, you're preempting me here. Go back one slide.
Go back.
Yes. And so that's the tender fit method, is really around building that capability. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we go on. So I'm not going to ramble too much, but today's session is on the capture management and how that's foundational for the tendering process, but also for business success. So if you take away one thing today, I want you to listen for what is the gold in this that you could actually start to implement or think about in your business right now that's going to make your business that much better in terms of capture management and in terms of your operational excellence. All right, next slide. Thanks, Rob. All right, so how to win a tender before it even lands. That's what we're going to get you to think about today. Next one. All right, so I'm going to hand over to my co-founder, Rob Machin, and he's going to run you through the next little while. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you. Look, I'm especially conscious of people that don't know what capture management is. And in fact, it's part of probably 7 or 8 phases or elements of responding to bids and tenders, which I'll just cover as soon as I've just just talk about myself for a little moment, which I'm comfortable with, but I'll just tell you my background. I currently work as an executive coach and mentor, and Jenny and others have dragged me back into this sort of career I had for 25 years, helping helping small and large companies bid into government. My background is in health, initially State Director of New South Wales Health, and then I moved into things like workers' comp management, consulting and the like. And I kept getting dragged back to tenders. I don't think anybody plans a career to respond to tenders and bids and to write application grants, but I did, and I kept falling into it, and I had some really good successes, which gave me a bit of a reputation. But I've done that. 6 billion has grown to $7 billion in terms of a single project. So for a long time, I've done this. The public sector, I started doing it when in the late 80s, early 90s, the New South Wales government in health followed the Maggie Thatcher model. And I mentioned that only because it's unique. She tipped out all non-core services in government in the UK and allowed the private sector to bid to do the work. So you might think of catering, cleaning, car parking, even IT services. But the unique thing she did do also was she enabled and facilitated the in-house teams, the current employees, to form organisations and bid for the business. And that's where the term competitive tendering came from. Well, I was the person that was tasked, I was seconded to the Department of Health to do that in New South Wales for health. And let me say that during that process, complex, named in Parliament, all sorts of weird things happened at that time. But in the first year of implementing those processes, New South Wales Health saved 80 million recurrent expenditure. That is, on an annual basis, a recurring $80 million saving from 1 year's worth of work. So that's how I got inveigled into tendering and how I got an interest in it. But let me go with a little bit of levity here. Would you propose or accept a proposal for marriage on your first date? You can see there, 2 people, unidentified, but an engagement ring. Well, it's unlikely you would accept a proposal on the first date, unless if you're with a proposer and you like awkward silences and restraining orders. Married at First Sight, I remind you, is a reality show, not reality. Yeah, that's exactly what many businesses do when they just find a tender to respond to it. In fact, we mentioned construction industry. I think Jenny did a little earlier. They pay subscriptions to organisations to scour the papers and the tender services just to drop the tenders in their mailboxes each Monday morning or whatever it might be. And so if you're tackling a tender from that viewpoint, you've set yourself up for failure. So no one would engage you to take on or to become a provider of service or products to them unless they knew you. It might sound funny, but a relationship is essential. And it's often been said that people don't buy products or services, they buy people. And I'll give you a very brief example of that. I saw a podcast recently with Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett, most successful financial investor ever. And I'm sure you would imagine, we had a partner too, that they just went into every element of the business before they invest in it. But BYD, the Chinese car maker, Buffett saw what they were doing, went to meet the guy and put $1 billion into his company immediately without any business plans, without any analysis. But he bought the guy and he literally said that, I believed what he was doing. I believed he could deliver. So there's a key for us. No amount of words or pages of response to a tender is going to win like a relationship with the potential client. There's no doubt relationships precede partnerships. In the same way that a relationship might get you to a proposal of marriage, but not until you've created that relationship and you get to know one another. Now, all the big companies understand this. They have big teams and capture leaders and the like. So what do we mean when we say capture management? Well, like so many terms in management, capture comes from a military parallel or example. So we use the words daily strategy and tactics. That's been accredited to Alexander the Great, and that's what he did and was very successful in taking over the world in his day. But many of those terms have actually been imported to business and management today. So capture management literally is about, if you think about an industry and you're pursuing business growth, it's really about the industries you're targeting. So for example, you might have something, a product or a service, so you target health or education or defense or any one of the others. Once you know what that target is, go back to the military analogy. This is like, which is the country we're going to take over? I hate to use the parallel of Ukraine at the moment, but you see villages by villages fall because of these strategies these people employ. Well, that's the parallel that's used in capture management for business development. And that is, you look at the various industries, the people within the sector you've targeted, and you just focus your energy in a single sector without wasting a lot of time. Let's just look at what might be a potential definition. So capture management is the structured, proactive process of positioning your organization to win a specific tender or contract before the RFT or RFP has dropped or been released. So you may be thinking, how on earth would anyone do that? How could you possibly predict what's coming down the pipeline? Well, that's what we're going to cover today. So getting back to our marriage proposal, trust before transaction, influence before the invitation, that is before you're invited, and some tenders are selective. You might be on a panel or a short list before it lands, and partnership before paperwork. So capture management is the courtship before the proposal or the bid is submitted. And during this time, you get the opportunity to build trust, you learn what matters to your client, you understand their pain points, they get the ability to learn about you and understand if you're the right partner. And this trust develops over a period of time. So you might be asking yourself, how would we know a tender's going to drop? Well, you can assume almost any service, and I forget what the threshold is now, but you can find out pretty readily. Any service over a certain dollar amount, and maybe $10,000 in the public sector, needs to go to some sort of tender process. And of course, why is that? They're the custodians of the taxpayers' money, and they need to be seen to be doing the right thing. So If you can imagine a tender's dropped, you respond to it a beautiful response with all of the compliance met and all the solutions that the tenderer is craving. Trust can't be developed through paperwork. It comes through connection. You need to have that relationship. Remember, people buy people, not products and services. So here we say trust before a transaction, you build it up. Influence before invitation. What does that mean? Well, if you get to know the tenderer before the RFT is developed, you might influence its content. You might sway it in terms of your discussions in your favour. And I know that's done often. And partnership before paperwork. Let me give you an example. IBM, most would know IBM, and I've worked with them on major bids during my career. They refuse to bid to anybody, no matter how big they are, government or private sector, unless they have key relationships in the organisation they're bidding into. And what I mean by that is they know the decision makers, the technical and financial influences of those decisions. So they will not bid, that's a rule of thumb for them, unless they have those connections. There's a lesson for all of us in SMEs. No one, and in fact, more so in many ways, because IBM has a reputation. And you might think, well, I'll go with IBM. Everybody knows Big Blue. In fact, there used to be an expression years ago when they were more significant in the computer area. No one got sacked for buying IBM. And that's because it was a safe bet. But for people in the SMS space, we really need to know and understand a client, and they need to get to know us if we're going to have success. So let's look at this thought of being reactive or proactive, which we've alluded to quite a bit. But the difference between being reactive, a tender drops and we rush to respond to it, and building a relationship through a capture plan. So to understand why capture management works, let's first look at why so many tenders are lost or won before they're even written. Well, here's the truth, that before a tender hits your inbox, the decision is often 80% shaped. They already have an idea, but they're under obligation in the public sector because of procurement rules for government to go out, and the market must be tested routinely. So someone's already influenced the scope, perhaps the language, maybe even the budget, because I said we could deliver something like you for X. And all of a sudden, these people behind the scenes influencing the specification are a step ahead of you. Most teams lose bids or people, not because they can't write, but because they start too late. Once again, when the tender drops, they're reacting to an agenda, not shaping it. And that's the key difference between chasing tenders and winning business. But what happens when you flip that approach? And look at our flipped pyramid here. Identify opportunity or the sector, and this should be based on your target of your market. Too many people I've worked with in the past, they'll be providing services in education. A big shiny opportunity might come up in educational defence and they go chasing it. But because they don't have specific experience, they don't realise already people supplying to health or whatever it might be. And so often sticking to your area of expertise is very valuable. But you identify an opportunity, you can shape it by having a relationship, influencing what's in it, you bid, and you've got more success of winning. We'll talk about the statistics on that shortly. But how do you do that? Well, by going through this capture management proactive process, you're in a position where you understand the real drivers of the organisation. Is it they want to get rid of the incumbent because they're not performing? Is it that they believe there's keener pricing out there, or that the incumbent is not up to speed with the latest developments in their industry and therefore is not giving them the best opportunity? And this is where you can influence value and you can align your capability to their needs, not vice versa. Let me repeat that. Your capability aligned to their needs and their pain points, not going in there, beating your chest, telling people what you have, assuming that everybody's going to want it. So this takes all the guesswork out of writing a response that's going to stand an opportunity of winning. It's about strategy. It's about doing things early and doing them right. Now, to make it practical, you need a structure, and that's where capture management comes in. So here's the thought here. Capture planning connects business development with proposal delivery. So it is essentially a process, something you can map, you can write out, you could even implement it in something like Salesforce CRM or something you're doing, but it connects the business development with not just the delivery, but the implementation as well. It ensures that your team or you stay aligned and informed and be ready when the tender lands to meet the customer's requirements. Why does all of this matter? Well, once again, we've said it, but it's the difference between chasing tenders as they land and helping to design them and designing them in your favor. Let's move on. So why does it matter to your growth? Well, growth doesn't happen by chance. Strategic capture actually creates predictability. It allows you to understand your client's requirements, and many, if you're bidding into government departments, they have several areas and divisions that will come up with very similar tenders. So if you got into education or health or something, you might find yourself on a panel or with some history in that sector, very well positioned to go forth. Reactive bidding, if you've ever been involved in doing bids and tenders, and I've done all-nighters several times for people who've come to me at the last minute, they've got 4 weeks to do a tender response. They're 2 weeks in and they're in a mess. And I'm talking about big organisations for tenders worth hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of dollars. But just ask anybody who in an organisation who's been taken out of their business as usual and thrown into the environment of having to develop and complete a tender or a bid. It is stressful. It needs project management, precision. It needs responses that are done in time to be reviewed as a holistic submission to the potential client. So it's not being caught off guard. It's not pulling out all stops and working all-nighters. It's about having a plan up front that can enable you to plan your resources and how best to get close to a potential client to understand their needs and how your resources and skill set will match them. So that gives you the opportunity in capture management to shape opportunities that matter. You deepen client relationships and you align your team's offer with the client's need. I can't overemphasize that. So many times someone will submit a bid, beating their chest about how good they are, reliable, so on and so forth, and yet they miss the point. They can't read between the lines to understand what the essential difficulties are for the client. I'll give you a brief example. Many years ago, I was working for one of the insurers, and we were providing as an agency workers' comp services. They'd lost a contract the period beforehand, 3 years beforehand. And for some reason, we were invited to the table again. Major company, it was a $30 million a year contract. And we got invited to the table. And for those, maybe Charlene, you would know that when these things happen, you normally have to go through a broker who sets up the meeting. Well, they give you a set time and it's all run to their schedule. I remember going to this meeting and I said, look, I just want to get off the agenda for a moment to make sure we're making the right presentation to you. And I asked them, what keeps you awake at night? What is the true pain that managing this part of your business gives you? That was my first question. And then my second question was, what would we need to do to convince you to move back to us? And I got an answer, believe it or not. And so the point was then the rest of the presentation around it was meeting their needs. And I'll cut a long story short. We spent a couple of hours doing that. We did some reviews and we won back that $30 million a year piece of business after losing it for a 3-year period. Because we demonstrated, we understood their needs at this point. We were going to meet them and we were going to address the issue we had in the past. So you shape these opportunities by asking those questions and doing bids around what you know. In this case, what were your failures in the past? So let's look at just briefly, and I mean briefly, 7 core elements which are the foundation of every capture plan. If you master these, you'll change your business how your business works and your win rates forever. But let's unpack them one by one. The first is opportunity qualification. Now let's use a bit of we talk about being tender fit, and that's because we've been fairly active in helping people bid for work around the Olympics, both the one in Sydney I did, but also the one coming up in Brisbane. But before any athlete goes into an event, he trains, and we're saying, this is what we've got to do. Is this the event we're in? Are we a runner trying to win a swimming event? Clearly not. Ask yourself, as a business, does this opportunity fit my business strategy? If I've decided I'm going to provide services to the Department of Education or to health or wherever, am I going to switch now because I see a big shiny object over here that I might be able to do based on my current skill set? Ask yourself, do I have the right strategy? Do I have the capability? Do I have the capacity to deliver on this? Not every opportunity you see deserves pursuit. And this can be difficult when you've got a small business for the very reason that you need cash flow. And that's the whole idea of this capture management. If you can secure government contracts, large company contracts, which run for 3, 4, 5 years, often with options for additional periods, then you secure your revenue stream and your business is underpinned by a regular income and you can do other things. So the idea of being managed and pursuing an opportunity and analysing it is that you chase less but win more. Next point, customer intelligence. This is what capture planning is all about. This is the, what did we say in terms of this is the courtship time. It's the opportunity when you get to know the person you're getting into business with. You notice I avoided saying getting into bed with. That analogy probably goes a bit too far, but we need to understand their world, or at the very least, as well as they do, if not better. We understand their goals, their pressures, their pain points. What is success to them? And here's a key thought. The best bids read like the client wrote them. That's how close we need to get to them. Thinking back to that military analogy, you might recall, you've often heard the expression, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Now, they're not enemies, but they're unknowns. And we need to get to know them in such a way they become friends and we become trusted advisors and trusted authorities to them. Third element, analysis. Find where you can win. Who are your rivals? Do a formal competitor analysis. And this is something you start and you maintain it through the course of your business. Who are your competitors? What are their strategies? Where did they beat you last time? Where they're likely to beat you? Do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Understand the differentiators, what you bring to the party that your competitors don't. What do you do better? What do you do worse? And understand what that means as an implication for you. And the best way to identify how to address that is understand what your potential client requires. Point 4, win strategy development. When you're doing a bid into government or large corporate, you need to craft a win theme that rings in their hearts and minds as true, even when you're not with them. They understand that you get it, you understand what it takes to win their business, and do something that might be a standout, something that sets you aside from the competition. Let me give you a brief example. Some years ago, we did a major bid in the public sector for workers' compensation management across all the sectors, in fact, health, fireys, teachers, police. And one of the things we discovered in this pre-bid situation, let me just depart here for a moment. If you're in the middle of a bid or responding to a tender from government, you can't speak to the people you want to bid to. That is, unless you have to submit formal questions and there are formal answers given back to you. Well, that's okay in one sense, but what happens is your question and the answers that you may be seeking are published to all of your competitors. So any unique advantage you might have would be exposed. So often doing those bids, people hold back asking the question for fear the answer might give advantage to a competitor. So what did we do in this case? We realized there was a significant shortage in public sector trained risk managers. Well, we brainstormed it and we went to one of the leading professors at one of the universities, New South Wales. The guy actually became the CEO of the AGSM in due course, and his specialty was risk management. So we said, could we create a single unit, a course, that could help public risk managers upskill? Well, we did it. Sure, we did it. It became a unit that allowed them an entree to a Masters of Business and Technology if they wanted to. And then what we did, we set up a sponsorship where we sponsored a number of scholarships each year. I can't recall what, maybe $5,000 each, in order for those people to get free training. And that's still running today, a decade or more later. So these win strategies and themes and ideas, innovations, can lift your proposal above the rest. Number 5, relationship and influence mapping. Again, let me repeat, people don't buy products and services, they buy people they trust. And what that literally means is that you need a relationship. You can't be trusted without having a connection with people. That's why capture management is part of this whole process of sales management, bid, and tender production is so critical. Build credibility early, influence ethically and authentically, and you'll get yourself in the shortlist before it's dropped. Solution and price shaping. Do you think you can influence price? Nearly every government tender has the expression value for money. What does that mean? It's really quite simple when you analyse it. It means you can help the government provide the same service for less money. It might mean on the rare occasion they've got a revenue generating part of their business to help them make more money. But more important than both of those put together is de-risking the service they provide. The challenge is to be able to de-risk, help them manage and provide us with less risk than they currently are doing. When you hear departments have failed in certain areas, it's the front page news. Politicians are unhappy, departments are unhappy. So they will pay a premium. They won't go for the cheapest price. They will pay a premium to get the risk management around the delivery of the service or products every time. So pricing to win is not about being the cheapest. It's about aligning your values with your potential client and understanding what your client truly values. And the final part of this is a capture plan documentation. Nothing beats a good process. When several people from your organization perhaps are dealing with the same potential client, you need a way of, you know this from customer relationship management, you need a way of aggregating your connections and what that might mean. You've got to record what you know about them, what you need to learn about them, who's responsible, and what's next. A lot of people say, well, how do you know when the tenders are coming up? Well, if they're being published in the paper, it's too late. But it's simply a case of, if you want to get married, how do you get to know someone? You approach them, you have a chat, you have a coffee, you have a talk. You actually make a simple approach to them and start creating a relationship. And that's how you start. And someone asked me that at a recent webinar. I said, well, go to reception, ask who's in charge of procurement. Who would it be in the business or the organization that I would speak to concerning the provision of, say, training services? And you'll get directed to the right person. A statistic that we often quote is this, that according to the federal government Department of Finance, the federal government earmarks approximately 35% of all tender business under 20 million to SMEs, and 25% of the business they want to buy in business under $1 billion from SMEs. SMEs are hugely underrepresented, and yet there are 2.2 million small businesses in Australia, and the government needs competition. It needs agile organisations that can deliver over and above the gargantuan corporate world that takes so long to do things. So there's space for all of us. SMEs are underrepresented, and there are lots of opportunities. They will embrace, generally speaking, your inquiries about how can we provide services and products to you in a competitive way. And so you develop this document over a period of time to see what the options are, stay in contact, and develop this relationship of trust and authority so that you're better positioned. When you connect these 7 elements that we've discussed, you move from chaos to clarity, from hoping and wishing to knowing how to win. It literally makes this a process that you can rely on and something that you've got to measure your relationship with them and rely on in terms of when you move forward and maybe complete a tender. You've got the relationships in place. All you need is somebody in there to say, these people are really worth talking to. They've got some great ideas. And all of a sudden you're on a short list. So from insight to action, I'm expecting that you've learned some things today that you probably didn't know. Or Solomon once said, there's nothing new under the sun. I think I agree with that. But we can always look at those same things from a different angle and think differently about the way we are setting ourselves up to respond to tenders a bit, or even just generate proposals because we have an idea or something that we believe would be to the advantage of that client. So what do we do when we think about embedding capture management within our business? Some will say, oh, it's just more work. I cannot cope with more work. This is not about more work. I remember in the early days when we started in a really sincere way to start. I think that the Japanese of the day called it Kaizen, probably still do, continuous quality management. We were doing it in hospitals and the like, and everybody, oh, extra work, we've got no time, we're too busy. But this is about a cultural shift. This is about making capture management the way you work when you're doing sales and marketing with anyone. And it's about being prepared and documenting your activity so that you ensure your success. So it requires leadership commitment. If you're the leadership in your organization, sorry, where did that go from? If you're the leader in your organization, then it rests with you. You need a commitment to not to abandon reactive bidding, but to manage the way you bid in the future. You need a process, a clear capture plan that aligns with your marketing and sales cycle and strategy. You need tools, a template, capture management template, and like the analogy of maybe capture in a military sense, village by village, city by city, capital city and country by, you want to, I hate to use the term, but you invade. This is the analogy of these words about capture. Who you're going after, who do you want to bring into your control and provide your services and products to? Capability is critical as well. Train your teams to think as capture leaders, as centurions responsible for 100 men in the Roman analogy, that they're going after business and they're going to work to get to know and understand, get the intelligence about the potential client and how they can best engage to have success. And culture, celebrate early engagement, intelligence wins, not just bid submissions and wins. By doing this and seeing the importance of it, you're almost guaranteed to win business. In fact, one of the statistics suggests all those that do capture management increase their success rate from between 20 to 40%. And this is exactly where Tender Coach can help you. How can we help you? Well, some of the cost gaps and the most important points that you had through this process looking at it, if you think about it, last time you bid, or what are the things that fear for you? Perhaps you could drop a note in the chat and say, of the things we've discovered, where do you think you're lacking most? Where do you think what we've discussed thus far could help you most in setting yourself up to be in a position to both approach and win a bid, approach an organization? What would you need to do from all that we've discussed at the moment? What we tend to do, we start with you, have a discussion and talk about a capture audit. What are you doing now? What's working, what isn't? It's the model of where are you now? Where would you like to be in terms of this endeavor? And how do we map the difference to take you from where you are to where you could be in the future? So we implement a capture plan which is customized for your particular business. We can provide training and coaching so that everyone speaks the same language across your organization. And we can develop this Tender Fit Advantage program, as we call it, into systems that are measurable, that drive growth. And every time you have an interaction and opportunity with a client, you know where you stand, you know where you've last engaged, you know how you've gained purchase into that organization, who to speak to. Because, when you embed this capture management discipline into your organization, you increase your potential for success exponentially. So I've mentioned before, this is research. This isn't just words here. Win rates increase 20 to 40%. The American Proposal Management Professional Organization, which is nationwide, I belonged to it for many years, actually produced this research. Bid costs reduce because you're prepared and you're planned. There's not all that rush on having to design and implement systems on the run to meet a new compliance requirement. And the customer trust deepens within you, and they will volunteer information to you that you'll never find in a tender document. When you've got a relationship with them, you stop reacting and you start leading. And here's a side benefit. When you get your business up to speed in order to comply with and qualify to go for a tender for a large company or government, you're actually improving the way your business functions. Win or lose, you gain. And it all starts with the simple decision, deciding that a client's worth winning before the tender arrives. Are they in your target or your capture audience that you want to grow business with? We go back here. They look like they're friends. They've known each other a while. Perhaps they've had a relationship. They've implemented their capture management discipline. And you might remember the marriage proposal analogy. In business, strong relationships lead to strong partnerships. And if you get a really good partnership with an organization, they will not want to let you go. In fact, once again, statistics prove that 80% of incumbents retain the business. Why? Well, if you're providing a good service, they won't want to get rid of you. You need to stay close to your client to ensure you're delivering and keeping up to speed with their requirements. But think of it from their point of view. Sometimes transitioning to a new supplier or service is difficult. It's costly. And so if you work closely with them, to treat each renewal for the contract as if you didn't have it and it was the first time you'd invested in it to win it. Realize these aren't one-off proposals. They're nurtured through insight, trust, and timing. They're developed over time. So capture management, you might align as your courtship phase. It's the time you get to know each other. It's the time you know each other before the proposal is made. It's where you develop your trust. And look, predictably, you might be entering a contract for 3 or 5 years, and there's a renewal period automatic if you've met all the criteria for another 3 years. Who wouldn't like an 8-year contract to underpin the viability of their business? So if you're ready to stop chasing tenders, you can start shaping them. Our next steps. I'm going to hand back to Jenny because I'm going hoarse, and I'm sure you've heard enough from me.
Thanks, Rob. That was great. Actually, there was one point where you talked about capture management and couldn't help but think it's a bit like going into, where do you want to go fishing before you even go on the first date, right?
Indeed. Yep.
Look, we really appreciate you being here. In terms of the next steps, Rob and I have curated a way for various types of businesses to work with us there. So regardless of whether you're a solopreneur or you're in an organization with a team, we can help you out and we can adapt our offer to do that. So the best place to start would be to scan that QR code And that gets you on our database. That'll take you to an expression of interest page. It's about as far as we've got with the website right now, because this business is fairly new in terms of its launch, but of course the experience behind it goes decades. So that will give you an opportunity to get in communication with us. From there, we can either send you a capture management template if that's what you're interested in, and that's something that you can work out on your own, and then of course come back to us if you need any help, or you can also book in a 30-minute tender fit capture audit, which basically will give us an opportunity to work with you and do an end-to-end review on what you've got so far. Either way, we would invite you to stay in touch with us. We have planned to deliver these webinars once a fortnight. So if you found this valuable, jump onto Rob's LinkedIn and just join the capture management or the webinar series, and you'll be able to hear about the latest updates. Or if you scan that QR code, we can let you know when the next one is coming up. And of course, if you absolutely love this and there was so much information you want to watch the replay, we will be putting that up onto YouTube as well. So before I say goodbye and let you go, we've got a couple of minutes. I would love to open the floor and the chat if you have any questions out of what we discussed today.
I think it just resonated with me and why I've been asked to supplement tender applications for that. I think, Rob, you said just to have that edge in comparison to their competitors. So it's starting to make sense to me now. And no, I truly believe in the trust aspect, considering I've attended 2 conferences within a week. Because everyone's all dropping carrots, but I know that it's about it's about building that trust first before they even move forward with the business.
Excellent. That's great. So what was a key takeaway that you might start to implement now, Charlene? What do you think?
Well, I definitely have to get the foundation right first. The risk management, I think you said, Rob. So getting all the work aligned, potentially having like an audit. Considering I'm only just started-ish, and knowing what companies need to mitigate that risk or reduce it in their eyes.
Well, you're in a great position if you're just starting off, because you're going to start with all the foundational elements in place. And, you know, one of the things that Rob continually reminds me is that 85% of tenders can be done in advance. So if you've got all that work set up as you go, this just becomes a fundamental, just puts you in a great position, doesn't it? Like to be able to keep your eye out for what's available, and then you just do that little bit of tailoring that's required.
Charlene, it's a small world. I was a national account director for one of the major insurers for a few years in workers' comp and insurance. And of all the fields, it's one thing if you want to sell a government department first aid kits, but when you're dealing with an industry like workers' comp and work health and safety, you can just imagine you need to underscore even more so the value of relationships. Right. It's just critical, because it's all about relationships, isn't it, in that industry specifically. So you need to match the values of the client you're pitching to.
Yeah, no, I agree on that one.
Yep.
Right.
All right. Wanda, I've just put a message in there in case you're not looking at the chat, but feel free to drop a question in if you have anything, or to come off mute if you like. But that concludes our presentation today. We will send you just a link to register for that audit in case you missed the QR code, or to book in a call with us if you'd like. Otherwise, wish you a happy Friday, and we'll see you again in a fortnight.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.